In the previous lecture, we have seen some of the nutrient cycle. Okay, and now in this lecture, we are going to see the ecological succession. First, we will see what is ecological succession. Ecological succession is nothing but it is a gradual and predictable change in the species composition of a given area is called as the ecological succession. What is the meaning of that? That means in a given area, okay, whatever the area is this, in a given area there is a changes in the species composition, and that changes are predictable and gradual changes are there, and due to that changes there are new species are going to evolve, and there is a different type of organisms are going to introduce, and such successive change in the species composition, it is called as ecological succession. In short, it is a progress of an ecological area, that is called as the ecological succession. What actually this ecological succession is? The ecological succession, we will see the broad structure of an ecological succession. There are majorly three major components are there, and these components are very much important. Other than that, if these three of them are not present in an ecosystem, there will not be ecological succession takes place. First of that, the species which present or which starts the ecological succession, it is called as the pioneer species. That means at the start of that ecological succession, first species is there who starts this succession. This is called as the pioneer species. This is the starter of the ecological succession. So this is the first component which is very much important in the ecological succession. Then the species which ends the ecological succession and remains as it is in the ecological succession, this is called as climax species, or we can call it as climax community. Okay, so there are two components, major components. One species which starts the ecological succession called as pioneer species, and one species which ends the ecological succession, and that species remains as it is in the ecological succession called as climax species, or we can call it as climax community. Now, in between the pioneer species and climax community, there are some of these species, or there are some of the communities present. Okay, pioneer species, after that one species is evolved, then there are some ecological changes, then another species is going to evolve. Such communities or such steps in between the ecological succession, these are called as seral communities, and each single species are called as sera, okay, or seer. You can call it as sera or seer. And by using or with the help of the pioneer species, seral communities and the climax community, the ecological succession takes place. Now this is the broad structure of the ecological succession. Now, according to the place of ecological succession, the ecological succession is divided into majorly two types. One is the primary succession and second one is the secondary succession. Primary ecological succession and secondary ecological succession. We will see both. First we will see the primary succession or primary ecological succession. This type of succession, this is the succession where at the area where there is no life form earlier, or there is no organic matter earlier, or there is no soil present earlier. That means the ecological succession starts where no life form earlier, no organic matter is there, no soil is there. At such places, if ecological succession starts, then such ecological succession is called as primary succession. Okay, and such primary succession takes longer time to complete the succession, because if primary succession is there is no soil, so first there should be soil formation is there, and you know that for the soil formation many of the years, thousands years required to make this soil. So primary succession takes longer time to complete. Okay, the examples for the primary succession, where the primary succession takes place, the newly formed pond, artificial pond when starts, firstly there is no any of the organic matter, there is no soil, only there is a presence of water. This is called as where if there is a succession takes place, this is called as primary succession. Then another examples are there, rock, where no soil and no organic matter is present. If succession takes place there, it is called as primary succession. Then cooled lava, where no living things are there earlier, no organic matter is there, no soil is there. If succession takes place, called as the primary succession. Then newly formed land, where no farming takes place earlier, it is a newly formed land. This is if there is a succession takes place, such succession is called as primary ecological succession. Now coming to the secondary succession. Now where the secondary succession takes place? Secondary succession takes place at the area where the life existed earlier. Okay, that means earlier there is a life, but due to some accidental condition, due to some environmental condition, the destroyment of that life takes place, and now that land or that area becomes very destroyed. So at such conditions, if succession takes place, this is called as the secondary succession. Okay, and this takes shorter time. Now shorter times means not actually shorter time, but it is shorter than that of the primary succession. If primary succession requires 1000 years to complete one succession, then the secondary succession takes 300 to 400 years to complete a one succession. That by that way it is a shorter. Okay, not actually 300 to 400 years are not actually short. Okay, so this is, it requires shorter time than that of the primary succession. The example for the secondary succession takes place at the fired area of the forest, where the fire takes place. Now after the fire there is a bare area. Earlier life form is there, but due to the burning, now there is no life form. And at such places, if succession takes place, this is called as secondary succession. Okay, this is about the primary and secondary succession. The succession takes place, there are some steps in the succession. Okay, we will see the few important steps in the succession. First step, it is called as the nudation. Nudation is nothing but the formation of an area. For the succession, the area is must required. So formation of area is called as the nudation. After the formation of area, second step is there. It is called as invasion. Invasion means there is an entry of the pioneer species. Pioneer species, the species which starts the ecological succession. So invasion takes place there. After that, there is an ecasis. Next step is ecasis. Ecasis means the growth of the development of that pioneer species takes place. That is called as the ecasis. After the growth and development, there is a next step that is called as aggregation. Aggregation, that means the adaptation and reproduction of the species takes place. Now when there is a growth takes place, in aggregation they adapt to that condition and they start reproducing there. This is called as the aggregation. And if there is a reproduction starts, after that so many species are coming there. Now there is a next step that is called as the competition, where dominant species is going to dominate over all other species and all other species are going to depress. Okay, that is called as the competition. After competition, next step is the coaction. That means due to that competition, one species is going to dominate and other species is going to suppress. That is called as the coaction. And the last step, it is nothing but the reaction and stabilization. That is nothing but the climax stage, where one or few species are going to dominate over all the species and that remains in that ecological system. That is called as the climax or stabilization step. These are some steps where by that steps, one by one, the ecological succession takes place. Okay, now there are where the succession takes place, according to which there are different names of the successions. Okay, if the succession takes place in a watery area, water medium. Okay, if the succession takes place in the water, then it is called as the hydrarch succession, or we can call it as hydrosery. Okay, at opposite to that, if the succession takes place on the rocks, and such succession is called as the xerarch succession, or we can call it as xerosery. And if the succession takes place on the land, this is called as lithosery. Okay, so these are the three types of the succession takes place. Now there are some of the reasons. Okay, there are some of the characteristic of that successions. You can see one graphical representation is there. We will take the two exactly opposite condition, that is the hydrarch succession and xerarch succession. One succession takes place at very dry area, that is called as xerarch succession, and one succession takes place at very plain watery area, that is called as hydrarch succession. And in between these two, you can see one type of succession, that is mesic condition. Xeric and hydric conditions are there, and in between them xeric condition is mesic condition is there. Sorry. Now what is the meaning of that graphical representation? That means if hydrarch succession or hydric succession takes place, this succession ends in a climax community, that is in the forest. In the watery area, if succession takes place, it ends into the climax community, that is in the forest. And forest, it is nothing but the mesic type of condition. And if the succession takes place at the xeric condition, very dry condition, it is also going to resulting into the climax community, that is forest. And forest, it is nothing but the mesic condition. Then you can see the three of the conditions. Hydric condition, where plenty of water is present. At the center, mesic condition, moderate water is present, and at the one end there is a xeric condition, where dry, there is negligible water is present. So either there is a xeric condition where negligible water is present, or either there is a hydric condition where plenty of water is present. Both the successions will end into the mesic condition, where moderate amount of water is present. So in the next lectures we are going to see both the hydric succession and xeral succession. That means hydral succession and xeral succession separate. Okay. So we will see in the next lecture the xeral succession first.